Hello, everyone. Matthew Darnley here, ED 501 Perspectives in Teaching and Learning. This is my legal presentation as required by Professor Mann. And I'm going to talk about the legal rights and responsibilities of special education students, teachers, and their parents. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. Okay, there we go. So in today's world, it's considered a standard that special education students deserve the same educational opportunities as their peers. But it wasn't always the general consensus. Many states actually prevented them from attending schools. Many students were actually institutionalized. They were placed in state institutions instead of attending school, and often these institutions did not provide any or little education. There was also segregation involved. So when children with disabilities were allowed to attend school, they were often placed in isolated classrooms away from other children. School officials believed this was for the protection of both the children with the disabilities and for a society as a whole. There was also a lack of accommodation. So even when education was required for all the children, many states actually refused to provide accommodations for LD students. So this responsibility was actually put on the families of the children. And also there was a fear of integration. Some people actually feared that children with disabilities would integrate into society and reproduce. So they weren't trained or educated at all. And this is why in 1973, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act was signed into law. So 504 is known as the United States' first federal civil rights protection for people with disabilities. Its language is actually built upon previous civil rights laws that protected women and minorities in the past. The law actually stated that no program receiving federal funds could discriminate against a person with a disability. And it set the precedence for things such as FAPE, or free appropriate public education. So this is actually a civil right that's rooted in the 14th Amendment and is guaranteed by the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And it requires schools to provide LD students special education and related services that's also at the public's expense, and it's designed to prepare those students for the future. So free, provided at the public's expense, under public supervision and direction, and without charge. Appropriate, so meets the standards of the state educational agency. We have public, which includes an appropriate preschool, elementary, secondary school within the state. And then you have education, which is provided in conformity with their IEPs. So the goal of FAPE is to give students with disabilities the same educational opportunities as students without disabilities. Then there was the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, which was passed in 1975. IDEA requires all schools and districts receiving federal dollars to provide students with disabilities a public education, and have it designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, for employment in the future, and also for independent living, regardless of their abilities. So IDEA and FAPE actually work together here, and they're provided in the least restrictive environment, or what we call LRE. And LRE actually helps promote inclusion and integration for students with disabilities, while also providing them with opportunities to learn alongside their non-disabled peers. The onset of IDEA brought about a widespread focus for the most effective methods for special education teaching. Now, not only were students guaranteed an equal education, but they were provided with viable schooling options and the individualized attention that they needed. So this was a huge positive step in education, special education history. Later, there was the No Child Left Behind Act, and that became a federal law in 2002 that aimed to improve public schools and student performance. NCLB's provisions include such things as standards, so requiring states to establish academic standards and testing systems, but that met federal requirements. Also assessment, so using standardized testing to measure students' achievements and establish some minimum performance benchmarks. It also had in there about funding, requiring school districts to meet performance goals to receive those federal funds, or had public school choice, so it allowed students to transfer to a higher performing school. But it just wasn't enough. And so the Obama administration drafted ESSA in 2015, which ended up replacing the No Child Left Behind Act. So ESSA, or Every Student Succeeds Act, is a law that includes provisions such as equity, protecting disadvantaged and high-need students, academic standards, so requiring all students to be taught, in high standards, accountability, so requiring states to develop plans for accountability for schools and districts. Special help, providing special help for struggling schools, including extra support and improvement and funding and so forth. And as you can see from the chart, there was some major differences, such as is there flexible funding for the schools? With NCLB, it was no. With ESSA, it's yes. Or how is testing used? To test and motivate low-performing schools, or to create innovative assessments and reduce unnecessary testing. So there was quite some differences. So what is the role of a general education teacher in helping students with disabilities in the classroom? What are they required to do legally? Things such as teacher quality standards come to mind. So these standards actually outline the knowledge and skills that make an excellent teacher. Or teachers have to follow Colorado academic standards. So, the standards that are the content that's required to be taught by the educator. And also teachers have to, follow Code of Colorado regulations. So these rules establish the standards and criteria for issuing licenses and authorizations. But there's also some other things that the general education teachers should follow, and things such as developing and implementing weekly lesson plans that facilitate the participation and learning of all students, including using EEOs when necessary, or help with reports such as IEPs. So IEPs is kind of a big one when it comes to LD students. So with the IEPs, a general education teacher needs to provide educational input about the student's academic performance and strengths and challenges in these meetings. They also need to collaborate on goals and objectives, such as contributing to the identification of academic and behavior goals. They also need to implement accommodations and modifications that will support the students' learning and participation in the general education curriculum. They also need to monitor the students' progress towards meeting the goals that are outlined in the IEP, using data and insights to assess the effectiveness of the strategies that are implemented into the lesson there. Also supporting inclusive practices to ensure that the students with disabilities are included in classroom activities and interactions. Also collaborating with the special education professionals, coordinate services and support for the students. And also ensure access to the general curriculum and opportunities to participate in extracurricular activities to the fullest extent possible. And lastly, provide feedback and communication regularly, not only with parents, but also with the entire MDT team as well, about the students' progress, about challenges, and about achievements. So things a general education teacher should know about LD students. Here's a quick little video to jump into that.
Overview of students classified with specific learning disabilities. Students with specific learning disabilities must be classified into one of the following 13 different categories to receive special education services. It will be explored through 5 different categories: prevalence, characteristics, teaching tips, student struggles, and assistive technology. Specific learning disability is a processing disorder where students are unable to fully reason, spell, read, do math problems, write or listen, etc. and so forth. Specific learning disability is the most prevalent. A total of 3 million students in the United States are specific learning disability classified. Specific struggles for these students include the inability to process specific information, which often leads to lack of attention, confusion, and inability to digest content. Although characteristics vary among different types of SLD students, there are some commonalities. The following common characteristics include dyslexia and dyscalculia, difficulties processing information, struggles in specific subjects, social skills deficits, and reading below grade levels. Here are some suggestions for assistive technology: books on tape, text-to-speech, calculators, colored overlays, and word processing applications. Let's explore what classroom teachers can do to help these SLD students succeed. Some tips suggested are for teachers to break down larger tasks, provide students access to note cards beforehand, and provide graphic organizers. To quickly sum up everything mentioned here, specific learning disability is a processing disorder. These students have struggles in specific subjects. A larger portion of students are classified under this disability than any other. As for assistive technology for the student, it really depends on the particular subject, and teachers should provide general modifications for these students and not get too carried away. Lastly, just remember, these students have difficulty absorbing information, and try to help that out. Right now, I just want to say thank you for your time, and please.
Okay. But can I do more for my classroom? So creating a more inclusive classroom environment for students with disabilities involves some thoughtful planning and also a commitment to meeting diverse needs. So, there's some strategies, as you can see, they're listed here, that can implement to make their classroom more inclusive for children with disabilities. Like, get to know your students' individual needs. Familiarize yourself with the specific disabilities and learning challenges of your students. Understand their strengths, their weaknesses. You could use assistive technology and adaptive materials. So incorporate technology and digital resources into the lesson to help the LD students use things such as text to speech, like the video said, or maybe a interactive whiteboard, or maybe record via video the lesson so they can go back and learn it at a slower pace, things of that nature. Also, encourage peer support and collaboration. So foster opportunities for peer support and collaboration. Assign PBL projects so buddies or partners can assist students with disabilities, and also maybe students with LDs might work better in these smaller groups, feel more comfortable about communicating and understanding things in that nature. How can modifications support students with disabilities in their education? So academic modifications help to remove barriers to learning that exist for students with disabilities. Some people tend to believe that using modifications gives LD students an unfair advantage, but it's not an advantage. It's actually a right. Having a disability means that a barrier exists, and proper modifications remove that barrier. So, for instance, an example would be students with LDs may have a slow reading speed that could potentially have an impact on their learning. So, modification would be talk-to-text software that they can use so that the words give them extra time to kind of understand and everything that's being said, and also help them complete the full assignment. So, what strategies are out there? Well, let's take a look. Here's a quick video to talk about strategies for LD students. Okay. So also remember that parents of students have legal rights as well. So you have the right to be informed about your child's educational needs and special education program. So your right to challenge decisions made about your child's special education program through dispute resolution, or your right to challenge decisions related to discipline. Um, so informed parental consent means that the school district must give you information that you need to make an informed decision. They must describe the activities. They must give you this information in your native language and make sure that you understand and agree in writing to the proposed activities. And at any time, a parent can decide that their child will no longer receive special education. A parent may withdraw consent and file a complaint against the Colorado Department of Education if they believe that the district has either failed to implement a valid IEP, has failed to follow special education, or is discriminating against an LD student. So, you have the right to challenge decisions made on your child's special education program, and this can be done through mediation, through filing a state complaint, or a due process complaint as well. And with your right to challenge decisions related to discipline, before changing your child's educational placement for disciplinary reasons, the school district must take certain steps to make sure that your child is not being penalized for actions that were caused by their disability. So make sure that you parents, you keep that in mind as well. But we have these systems in place for a reason, and they're in place because we all have the best interest of the student in mind. And they are also in place because it works, and the processes are constantly being assessed and updated when needed. So rest assured that the student will always come first. Thank you.